Okay.
So I'm not saying that Sani Abacha is a good person. I don't think there are good people and bad people.
But he's not your worst.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Not even in the bottom three.
Wow.
Not even in the bottom
Okay. Okay. No, who is your worst and best president in Nigeria?
Very controversial.
I want to understand Nigerian leadership very well before we go to insecurity and oil and all that. If you look at, first of all, I'd like to know who is your worst and best president in Nigeria?
Very controversial. My worst is Ibrahim Babangida.
Oh, I've heard of him. Mm-hmm.
The reason is my worst is that he ranks even above Tinubu for being my worst. And the reason is that it was under his tenure that structural adjustment first became a thing. IMF imposed structural adjustment. And that wasn't just an economic project. It wasn't just the economic debasement of Nigeria. It led to so many other outcomes that we're witnessing now. So, for example, it was under Babangida that, for the first time, foreign ownership of Nigerian media was permitted. And in the 40 plus years since then, foreign money, American money has poured into Nigeria's information space and has made a lot of Nigerians think that they are deputy Americans. And that has created problems for everybody. So even the concept of sovereignty doesn't make sense to many Nigerians now, because many Nigerians do not know that they are Africans. They do not. Many Nigerians think that they are assistant Westerners.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, like to many Nigerians, if you say you are anti-West, you have said something wrong. Many Nigerians genuinely do not know that they are not part of the West. They genuinely, and I'm not being sarcastic when I say this, they genuinely do not know. They genuinely believe that, hey, we speak the same English, we worship the same Christian God, we wear the same Savile Row suits, they put on all these affectations of being what they're not, and they genuinely believe that they're both aligned. Meanwhile, as I always like to say, half jokingly, you're a monkey in a suit.
Oh,
They don't know that. And you can trace that back to Ibrahim Babangida. Because it was under him that not just the economic, but the cultural
shift.
What's the word I'm looking for? Terraforming of Nigerian society. That was when it really kicked off. And it's prior to Babangida, the concept of African pride was still a thing that was in the popular consciousness in Nigeria. The understanding of the world being a bigger place than Nigeria was a thing. Prior to Babangida, Nigeria used to have a reputation for being a country that supported and funded a bunch of African liberation movements, for example, a bunch of them. Whether it's South Africa, Mozambique, Namibia, Nigeria was involved in all of those things once upon a time. Babangida comes in and his government shrinks Nigeria's foreign policy, shrinks Nigeria's public space in such a way that the average Nigerian now doesn't really understand that there's a world outside Nigeria. That Nigeria exists within a wider geopolitical context. So if you're now in 2026 trying to explain to Nigerians that the war in Ukraine, for example, has direct implications for you, and it doesn't make sense. They can't perceive of it because their world begins at Gibea and ends at Sebe, the northern and southern borders. That's it. So I don't know how many Nigerians you've met, but you will find if you meet with a number of Nigerians, you will find that they're not even visually familiar with what the rest of Africa looks like. They are not visually acquainted with what the rest of Africa looks like. They think that the rest of Africa looks like Nigeria. It doesn't at all. But they don't know that.
Wow.
You might think that you've met a lot of well-traveled Nigerians, or there's a large Nigerian diaspora.
Yeah.
There's a large Nigerian diaspora with an asterisk. And the asterisk is that, let me ask you a question. Can you guess what the total percentage of Nigeria's population is that travels internationally every year?
Well, travels or like goes out there and settles.
That has ever left Nigeria's borders.
Left, period.
Mm.
Because it has the highest immigration rate. I would think it's about 50%.
2%. 2%.
Wow.
2% of 230 million is...
Let's do my quick math.
4.6 million. That's more than the population of some countries. So if there are 4.6 million Nigerians who travel or who have traveled, those are the people you meet. So those are the people who give you the impression that Nigerians know a thing or two.
Wow.
The vast majority of Nigeria is insular, it's uneducated, it's trapped. So the Nigerians like me that you meet, we are statistical outliers. We are not Nigerians in the real sense of it.
I get you. Wow.
Yeah. That's the reality. This can all be traced back to Ibrahim
Babangida.
It was under his administration that horrible morphing of Nigerian mental architecture began.
That's where it began.
Yeah. And then my best president...
Wait, before you go to the best, I thought you would say your worst is Sani Abacha.
No, actually, because... So... They are...
Because I've read horror stories about Sani Abacha.
See, that in itself is the problem, isn't it? You've read horror stories about him. Whose stories? And where did you read them? Because even I myself, it's been a very painful realization, but I myself have had to, over the past couple of years, I've had to admit to myself that almost everything I know, or I thought I knew about Sani Abacha, came from poison sources.
Okay.
So when you realize, for example, that the people who call themselves NADECO, National Democratic Coalition, who supposedly fought Sani Abacha for return to democracy and all, when you realize that NADECO itself was a CIA project, it was not an organic entity, it was a CIA project and it had foreign funding throughout its entire lifetime. It then makes you start to question everything else. What else do I know about or think I know about that 4-year period that came out of a poison deformation source? I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. So the most common thing you've heard about Abacha is that he stole $4 billion, $5 billion, and that they're constantly returning parts of his loot from Switzerland. The part, for some reason, that is never, ever, ever mentioned is that under the Abacha regime, right? The Abacha, I shouldn't use the word regime. Under the Abacha government, Nigeria was under US economic sanctions and actually I was not permitted to take part in the global economy the way it is now. Several people close to him and who worked in that government have come out and said several times that the reason why sovereign funds were placed under personal names, like personal bank accounts in like tax havens and stuff, was because Nigeria was reduced to moving money around like a criminal just to be able to survive. Because Nigeria was not permitted to take part in the global financial system. That part is never mentioned. So a lot of that loot is actually sovereign funds that had to be moved using
private accounts,
using the architecture of money laundering.
Okay.
That's actually what was happening. Nigeria was under sanctions. And that this sanctioned money, they've still not returned the bulk of it. The bulk of these sanctioned funds are still sitting in God knows where. And they know exactly where they are, and they've still not returned the bulk of it.
So why?
Every couple of years, they will make an announcement they've sent a new tranche, $300 million tranche.
But why have we done? Why?
You have to ask them. And that's the point I'm making, that a lot of the information you hear is poisoned. You will also hear, for example, that, he was a killer, which he was.
Ken Saro-Wiwa.
His government went around murdering people, which they did.
Okay.
What you don't hear is who were those people? Because when you then realize that Sani Abacha and Muammar Gaddafi were basically the same person, absolute nutcases, but nutcases that had
A method.
Exactly.
A method to their madness.
Exactly. And I had the same goal in mind, which was attainment of some form of sovereignty.
Okay.
In the face of several odds. And that these people, including the name you mentioned, these people were all working for someone else.
Kensarowiwa.
Yeah. So was Kensarowiwa a hero?
Well,
yeah, he wrote.
think
He was a great literary figure. He wrote some things.
Brilliant.
But you could also say that Wole Soyinka is he won the Nobel Prize for literature or whatnot. But anybody who knows anything within the space will tell you that Wole Soyinka, at the very least, if he's not an active asset now, at the very least, has worked for the US government before. Like, this is a documented fact. So is he a hero?
But I mean, was it Trump revoked? Was it his passport or his visa or something?
Yeah, he threw a tantrum and Trump threw a tantrum back. Yeah, two silly old men. The point is, a lot of this information that comes from that era was we only had access to one side of the story from that era, and a lot of the information that was presented was coming through that poison lens. So the only story I ever heard growing up, Abacha was a murderous dictator. He stole Nigeria's money, and his wife and kids were like Uday and Saddam Hussein's children, Uday and Kwesi. That those are Abacha's kids, basically.
Oh,
those are the only stories you ever heard. You never hear, for example, that under Babangida, because Babangida was Abacha's direct predecessor.
Okay.
That the economy had so collapsed under Babangida that things actually stabilized under Abacha.
Under Abacha. Interesting.
You don't hear that part. That the real downfall took place under Ibrahim Babangida. And then, if you like, the consolidation happened under Abacha. So Abacha actually also took a lot of the blame for problems that were incubated by an administration that was basically working for the IMF. Because that's all Ibrahim Babangida did during his time.
Okay.
So I'm not saying that Sani Abacha is a good person. I don't think there are good people and bad people.
But he's not your worst.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Not even in the bottom three.
Wow.
Not even in the bottom
three. Okay, let's go to the best now.
My best. Oh. So the reason I'm hesitant about answering this question is that to say that someone is the best is to say that you approve of them. I don't think there's anyone that I really approve of. I don't think there's any one of them that has actually done enough.
Obasanjo?
This goes back to what I just said. So if you're looking at the economic numbers, clearly Obasanjo. Clearly. If that's all you're looking at, taking Nigeria from X to Y, Olusegun Obasanjo by like night and day.
Okay.
Maybe Goodluck Jonathan second. But Obasanjo, and this has been very well documented in several places. This is not just me saying it. This is the thing that has been documented by multiple people. Obasanjo, throughout his career, both in the military and as a retired military officer, has been a very close friend of the Americans.
Okay.
So if you recall, in 1998, after the death of Abacha, and then the death of Abiola, who thought of himself as the rightful occupant of the seat, who was it who made the decision that the next president of Nigeria should be Olusegun Obasanjo? Who really made that decision? Was it the Nigerian military? Abacha's military? No, clearly not.
So who was it?
Abacha's military couldn't have made such a decision because Abacha was the one who put Obasanjo in prison.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Yeah, Abacha's people did not like Obasanjo.
Yes.
It's not Abdul Salam Abubakar who was a lame duck placeholder. The person who actually made that decision was Susan Rice. That was, as far as I'm concerned, that was Nigeria's real head of state.
And who was Susan Rice for people who don't know?
So she was a US diplomat. Diplomat is a code word for high-ranking CIA operative.
Interesting. Okay.
that's what she was. And as far as I'm concerned, after Abacha died, she was basically the de facto head of state of Nigeria. She was the one who made a bunch of those decisions.
Wow.
So somebody who has always, at every point in his career, has always had those whispers surrounding him. How much of a good person is he? And then in 2015, he queued up with this same US-backed opposition that took Nigeria from 100 to 0. He was one of them. So what you find out about Obasanjo is that he talks a lot of good stuff and he says a lot of things that sound nationalist sometimes. Like I remember he famously made a comment that if the IMF tells you to do something, you say yes and then you do the opposite.
Interesting.
So I like that. But it's also the case that at every point in his career, he has always found a way to somehow, to mysteriously and miraculously always come out on top in places where his contemporaries were either tossed out or died. He always benefited. So when Murtala Muhammad, who thought of himself as like a rabid nationalist, Marxist kind of leader, he was assassinated in 1976. Who benefited from that?
Who?
It was Obasanjo, because he became president.
Okay. Then Abacha. No. Sorry. Go on.
You know, when Abacha, mysteriously died.
Yeah, but it's very funny how he died. What happened? I mean, because what we all know is that, I don't know if it's true, but he died with having some fun.
Again, that thing about poison information, because somebody made sure that story got into the papers almost as soon as he died. That something about Indian prostitutes and apples.
That's it.
And that has become the accepted narrative for all these years, that he died of a heart attack because he was having sex with an Indian prostitute or something. Meanwhile, his chief of staff, what's his name again? General Al-Mustafa, has said several times, and for whatever reason, nobody ever carries the story, that a few days before Abacha passed away, that he received a delegation from the PLO, that's the Palestinian Liberation Organization led by Yasser Arafat, and that he shook hands with someone in that delegation. And that from that moment, when he shook hands, that he was not himself, and he died a few days later. And then, a few years ago, due to the usual declassification of information, we then find out that Yasser Arafat himself was working for the US government. It's not me that said that again. You can literally Google it. It's on public record. Yasser Arafat was a US agent himself.
Okay.
So how did Abacha really die? We will probably never know, because again, that's just an accusation. Until we see a signed document, maybe declassified 75 years from now, where it doesn't matter anymore. That's when we'll know. But again, a lot of what we heard from that period was just somebody putting, priming the pump, someone poisoning the well. So I wouldn't necessarily take it serious. But if I absolutely had to choose a best, I would choose Goodluck Jonathan. And to be honest, it gives me no pleasure to say that. Because it's like saying that the best is like, the worst is like a -5 out of 10, and the best is like a +2 or +3.
Okay.
3 out of 10 is still a...
Yeah, it's not. But he is at least the best in terms of...
By default.
Default.
It wasn't really through any... so the economic breakout that we witnessed under him, the trajectory actually started under Obasanjo.
Okay.
So that was not entirely his doing, and it's not fair to credit him entirely for it. So it's like a 50-50 between he and Obasanjo. And then more importantly, the geopolitical, the credit I give to him for making or for not simply being another US puppet, I feel like it's not enough to not just not be a puppet. You also have to strategically be something. You can't just not be something. You also have to be something. So as he decided not to be a US puppet, it's clear that in a world that has, it's not really a multipolar world. There are 3 poles in the world, and we know what those poles are. If you are rejecting one pole, you have to align yourself with one or 2 other poles. That's the only way to survive. He didn't do that.
Interesting.
So yes, there was Chinese investment in Nigeria. Yes, they tried to sign a Naira Yuan swap deal. Yes, blah, blah, blah. But he knew months, if not years ahead of time, that there was a regime change operation that was being activated against him. He had all the time in the world to make a real statement. Fly to Moscow, sign a defense pact, do something that would have stopped Nigeria falling into the hands of these people in 2015. He didn't. He had every opportunity. And then afterwards in the interviews, he then says, well, he knows that there was the US government the US Navy had a ship waiting off the coast of Labadi in Ghana, that if anything had happened, they'd have invaded. Yes, but that would only have happened if there was no counterbalancing force. If there's a US Navy destroyer off the coast of Labadi and there's a Russian Navy destroyer off the coast of Takwa Bay in Lagos, nothing will happen.
Because now, because Russia is there now.
Nothing will happen. I think he fell into that trap of, that very disingenuous thing that some people who call themselves anti-imperialists do when they say that, oh, they're all the same. So they'll say that, oh, the AES is not doing anything revolutionary. They're just exchanging one imperialist for another. That they're aligning themselves with Russia. Putin is an imperialist. You know that that thing they say, which is like one of the most dishonest things I've ever heard, but I think he fell into that trap where I'm not going to be a US puppet, but at the same time, I'm just going to be a sitting duck. I'm not going to publicly pick a side. Like, I'm not going to decisively pick a side. Because that's what I would have done. And if I were ever to get into power in Nigeria, which is not very likely, but if I were ever to
we wish you would.
If I were ever to do so, I mean, this is not something I'm saying with any kind of hesitancy whatsoever. The week that I got into power, that same week, like my first international visit will be to Moscow.
Interesting.
To sign all manner of defense pacts. And it's not because, oh, Russia is coming to save us. No, it's because the seriousness of the situation that you are in warrants corresponding force.
Okay.
It's as simple as that. You cannot try to be a sovereign country where there's some guy in Washington that some Anthony Blinken or some Mike Pompeo or some
Rubio
guy, Marco Rubio, who has the power to sign off on an operation to carry out a decapitation strike against your government, and you call yourself sovereign. You know, like Nicolas Maduro was trying to be sovereign, but it clearly wasn't.
Yeah. We know that now.
It clearly wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, so if you are not like if you haven't done what the AES have done, you haven't done anything, in my opinion. The AES, they have picked a side. They have been very explicit about it. They have Russian air defense systems in their country. They have Russian military advisors. They have assistance from Russian intelligence. Again, none of this is because, Russia is sugar daddy that's coming to save anybody. Russia has their own interests. We all know that. We're not babies here. But the point is, you are using, if you like, one great power to fight off another, because that's the only chance you have to become a middle power. Right? Because right now, you are not a power at all. You are grass that is at the mercy of everybody else.
But, so, if I were to craft that plan, I would say, fine, I get why you're going to Russia, but is there a plan that we can formulate as an African?
Of course there is. And of course that will be the long term. That is the ultimate long-term plan. Nothing can replace that. Because even in the AES, and I think I said this on another platform a few weeks ago, that Russia is willing to give the assistance it's giving in the AES now because it has its interests there. The conflict in Israel is directly linked to the conflict in Ukraine.
Okay.
That's why Russia is so invested in what happens in Israel. From Russia's point of view, continued European access to cheap African minerals is a problem for Russia. Because number one, that's starving Russia of revenue, because instead of Russia being the resource base of Europe, they're getting cheap resources from Africa. Number two, those resources which are generally used in military applications, who are those, when Europe finally uses those African resources to rearm itself, who is it going to use those arms on?
Mm-hmm.
It's Russia. So from a Russian point of view, the way to preserve peace and to preserve its market in Europe is to make sure that Europe is not allowed to have access to cheap African resources. And the way to make sure Africa is not allowed to have to make sure that Europe doesn't have access to cheap African resources is to equip Africa to be able to defend itself from Europe and to be able to use its own resources. That's when they're signing pacts, for example, to build nuclear reactors in the AES, so that these guys no longer have to sell uranium. They can use it for themselves.
That's it.
It's war. That's literally a war strategy.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what this whole thing is about. And I feel like too many people don't understand that. So I think Goodluck Jonathan fell into that trap. And I don't think, even now, where supposedly he wants to run for office, I don't think he has still figured out that you need to pick a side, which is very unfortunate.
So now, oil. Nigeria, the biggest oil producer in Africa. But